Why do teachers tell bullied children to ignore it when it doesn't work? Because it's easier than dealing with the problem. Because bullies are kids too, and no parent wants to hear that their kid is a bully. Even when you do, then once that punishment finishes for the bully, there's going to be retaliation. So this cycle gets created where you have to rack up a few infractions to get to a more severe punishment, but the victim has to suffer through that. Also, what's clear for the students isn't always clear for the teachers. Believe it or not, kids lie. It really sucks when you are the one that's not believed, but it's someone's word against another, and when the bully has friends that corroborate their story, it gets really messy. As someone that got bullied relentlessly myself, it's just not clean cut like the movies or that one instance someone remembers from school. I had a girl walk by me and squirt me with lotion, throw shoes at me and claim I took them from her, insult me regularly, flick bits of food off my plate, make stink faces when I walk by, etc. And that's just one person of many. But I can't take any of those incidents to a principal and say, since she knocked down your piece that no one seemed to see, let's put her in detention with a clear conscience. Because sometimes the bully's parents donate a significant amount of money to the school and they don't want to risk losing the funding. In middle school, I had saved up the princely sum of $50 to buy a 10-speed bike from a neighbor. That was a big deal for a 13-year-old in the mid-80s. Immediately after lunch, known bully comes up to me and says, "Hey Jeep pilot, anything happened to your bike over lunch?" And walked away. I wasn't aware of anything because I didn't go outside during lunch. But after school I noticed that all my brake and shifter cables were yanked out. Tires were flattened, and the luggage rack on the back was twisted beyond recognition. Upon seeing this, I dragged the bike to the principal's office and explained what happened and was told possibly 10 reasons why it was my own fault. And there was no proof that he did it. It ended up being my fault because, if my bike was so important to me, I wouldn't have just left it locked up on the bike rack with all the other bicycles during the school day. This is the same principal who punished me because I borrowed another kid's pencil and broke the point off while using it. The punishment was because I needed to learn to respect other people's belongings. Ignoring it is the first thing to try. But if that's their only solution, then that's not great. So it's swept away under the rug and nothing done about it. I was raised, and I raise my kids with the following: do not start the fight, but by all means finish it. If my kid is defending themselves or those who cannot defend themselves, then there will be no punishment from my end. The school can discipline them all they want, but they will be praised for standing for what's right. In my household, in my experience, the bullies were part of our sports teams, and they wouldn't be able to punish them without risking the trophy. So they let them bully others. I got suspended for fighting after some guy on the rugby team slammed my girlfriend into a wall and almost broke her wrist. She had visible damage. And the school cop was threatening me with assault charges because it wasn't on school property. My dad piped up and said I wouldn't have touched him if he kept his hands to himself, and asked why. I had to step in when the teacher was in the class. They didn't have a good answer. Then my dad said in front of the principal, cop, bully, and his parents that if anything like this happens again, then he gives full permission for his son, me, to step in and stop it, since the teachers are clearly incompetent. He kept bullying friends of mine but wouldn't do it near me because he knew I'd step in. His rugby buddies tried to jump me a few weeks later in retaliation to him getting in trouble, and it caused an all-out brawl between my friends and the rugby team. Half the rugby team couldn't participate in the following tournament because so many of them were hurt or suspended. Many years ago, My oldest was getting bullied at school. I had him tell his teacher, the yard lady, etc., and they all just told him to avoid the kid. So his entire recess and lunch breaks were spent running away from this kid and his followers. Finally, I told him to tell the principal. So he did at morning recess. The principal says to tell him again the next time, which was later that day. The principal says he's too busy to deal with that now. So, after months of this, I told my kid to stand his ground and give the kid a good punch. And when he got dragged to the office, to call me, and I'd come as I was waiting for the call. And it's just after morning recess. I get the call and tell the principal I'd be right there. He kept saying no, you don't have to be, and I said, oh yes, I do. And he says my son will be suspended. And I told him absolutely not. He says there's been a few days of trouble between the kids. And I said no, it's been months. You told my son you would help him yesterday, but then you didn't bother. Oh, I'm very busy. Well, I'm sorry. My kid is not going to be a sitting duck if you don't protect him. He needs to be able to protect himself. He has the right to enjoy his recess like every other kid and not spend it trying to get away from a bully. He was not suspended, and the kid did not bully him again. In fact, he started to defend other kids who were bullied. Depends on the kind of bullying. If it's light, verbal bullying, ignoring it can work, since a lot of these bullies are just doing it to get a reaction out of you. I'd say this is the most common form of bullying and happens to practically everyone throughout their lives. More serious targeted kinds of bullying can't be handled that way. Why do teachers tell bullied children to ignore it when it doesn't work? Because that's probably how they handle their own personal issues. I've never seen a clear case of bullying in my classes, never seen anything like in the movies. Like shy kid being clearly bullied by a huge group in school or after. We have certain kids who constantly insult each other. They are so vile to each other that it's impossible to find a victim or a perpetrator. Both sides dish out. In this environment, the quiet kids are not relevant and just exist in there and watch the others with confusion. Nearly all schools here in the US claim to have a zero-tolerance policy towards bullying. What they claim it means and what actually happens are two different things. They claim it means bullies will be punished. In reality, victims of bullies that dare stand up for themselves against their bully tend to be the ones being punished, despite numerous times of telling teachers, parents, or adults about it, thus causing the victims mental anguish and suffering. That's why too many of the victims may harm themselves, develop mental trauma, even unalive themselves, or bring weapons to school to get revenge. I'm a teacher, and I would never dream of doing this. Bullying stops where it starts every time, and there's no wiggle room. A lot of times if you give a reaction of any sort to people bullying you, it just feeds their desire to do it more. Most bullies just want a reaction, or to see you unhappy, or to get a reaction from other people. Once you take away that attention, it sometimes removes the motivation from them. This absolutely does not work in all scenarios and only works on certain types of bullies. Typically verbal ones. Bullies that are assaulting you, that's usually a different game plan. Far as not punishing them, because they don't want to have to deal with the parents. It's crazy how many people and how many parents support their toxic children. Typically because they're just as toxic. Then on top of that, it's the teachers in the school system also. If the people punishing bullies don't have 100% support from the parents and everyone else, it fails miserably. It's a way of shifting or reassigning responsibility off of themselves and onto the child and their parent or parents. Nothing more. This is yet another example of function above the neck at work. Most of us with function above the neck know better. If a bully bullies, punish the bully. End of story. Schools that adopt this weak-ass way of handling bullying will also gang up on you if you question them about it. It's yet another tactic to placing the blame on the victims instead of doing what's right. You'd be better off getting an inter-district transfer to another school. Just make an appointment with the principal first and see how they deal with this sort of scenario. Because bullying means a lot of things and there is only so much you can do about it. You can do something about physical violence. But what about being called names and stuff like that? It is a lot harder to police that. On top of that, teachers don't get paid enough nor have the time to manage bullies all day long. One of my kids was bullied waiting for the bus stop, and the only way we got it to stop was to get a protective order from the two kids that were doing it. Yeah, the kids couldn't go near the bus stop, couldn't take the bus. But because they went to the same school, it was a lot harder to enforce it. Even though we got assurances from the principal that they would be mindful of. One of the bully's parents also worked at the school, and when my kid was in her class, it was a problem and we had to get him assigned to another teacher. Because if you punish the bullied, we'll go away. Because boys will be boys, etc. The only way to stop bullying is to severely punish the bully. 1. Schools don't actually punish children anymore. In fact, many have eliminated detention altogether. It's also why a lot of teachers are leaving the profession. Kids have gotten a lot worse behaviorally because there are no consequences. 2. Most of this issue should be dealt with by the parents. Parents need to teach their children how to deal with bullies in whatever way they want. It isn't really the teacher's job to do that. Most teachers are people who had enjoyable K-12 experiences, so they generally don't relate to or care about bullied kids. Because telling the kid being bullied to square up against their bully would raise eyebrows. Because the adults are ignoring the children, they don't want to deal with it.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. TooAfraidToAsk is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.